Hello friends and welcome to Hitbullseye. My name is Manish और इस वीडियो में हम डिस्कस करने वाले हैं इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस which is an important part of political science 12th NCERT syllabus. So welcome back to this series in which we are discussing all these topics. So in this particular topic we are going to discuss the topic of international organizations. So if you haven't watched the previous videos, you can watch those videos. And we have covered so many topics from the 12th political science NCERT in that particular class as well, right? So in this particular class we will be taking the topic forward. पिछली classes में हमने contemporary South Asia, contemporary world, Cold War, bipolarism, unipolarism, all these topics we have covered up. So in case you haven't watched those videos, do go watch those videos on this particular channel, and also सब्सक्राइब टू द चैनल एंड हिट द बेल आइकन ताकि जब भी हम ये वीडियोस डालते हैं उनके नोटिफिकेशंस आपको मिलते रहें. नाउ सिंस वी वर डिस्कसिंग दिस टॉपिक ऑफ पॉलिटिकल साइंस, द कोल्ड वॉर एरा इज द एरिया ऑफ फोकस एंड इट रिमेन्स द एरिया ऑफ फोकस फॉर दिस एंटायर book. So for that purpose, since we are talking about the Second World War, there are certain important organizations that we need to know about. और उसमें सबसे पहली और सबसे important organization है the United Nations. Now United Nations was not the first organization which was an the entire global organization. लेकिन it has turned out to be one of the most successful organizations post the Second World War. बेसिकली यूनाइटेड नेशंस 1945 में बनाई गई थी और इसलिए बनाई गई थी ताकि थर्ड वर्ल्ड वॉर ना हो. ऐसी ही एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर के बाद भी बनाई गई थी एंड इट्स नेम वाज द लीग ऑफ नेशंस. द लीग ऑफ नेशंस. This was made after the First World War, but it was not successful because the only purpose of League of Nations was to ensure that there is no Second World War. लेकिन जब Second World War हो गई, that means the League of Nations was a failure and hence it was abolished. But after the Second World War, it was it was anticipated that there should not be a Third World War because Second World War was itself very catastrophic, and therefore the concept of United Nations came into being. Right, so 1945 में जब Second World War खत्म हुई तब United Nations establish की गई. Right now it has 193 member states. Virtually all the countries of the world are a part of United Nations. Its headquarters are in New York, USA. It is successor to the League of Nations, the same League of Nations which was made defunct after the start of the Second World War. And ये टर्म जो है यूनाइटेड नेशंस, इट वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड इन 1942 by Winston Churchill and Franklin D. Roosevelt. So Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister of England at that time and F.D. Roosevelt was the President of USA. So at that time, the entire Western bloc was fighting against Japan, Italy and Germany. So यूनाइटेड नेशंस टर्म इसलिए दी गई थी कि सभी नेशंस को यूनाइट हो जाना चाहिए ताकि फासिज्म को खत्म किया जा सके. बट वंस द सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर वाज ओवर, द फोकस टर्न्ड टुवर्ड्स द ग्लोबल यूनिटी एंड हेंस यूनाइटेड नेशंस बिकेम अ रियलिटी. इफ वी टॉक अबाउट द स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ यूनाइटेड नेशंस, it is actually the only truly global organization. बाकी जितने भी organizations हैं, they are either multilateral or they are regional, but United Nations is the truly global body because of its membership. अब अगर हम इसकी organization की बात करें या structure की बात करें, it has 6 principal organs and so many specialized agencies. मतलब primarily जो United Nations काम करती है वो इन 6 organs के behalf पर और इन organs के through काम करती है. So for example, the UN General Assembly, it has 193 member nations and it is like the deliberative organ of the United Nations. That means all the deliberations, all the discussions, voting, etc. takes place in UN General Assembly. So it is like a parliament in which all the countries are sitting. It's like a parliament of the entire world. so to say. Next comes UN Security Council. This, I think, is the most important organ of United Nations. United Nations Security Council. It has 15 member nations, out of which 10 are non-permanent members and 5 are permanent members, which are fondly called as 5P. तो 5P members वो सभी members हैं who actually won the Second World War, like except China, बाकी जो भी countries हैं ये सब Second World War की winners थी, and they gave themselves all the privileges that there were, most of which is the veto power. So 5P are US, Russia, France and Britain, और बाद में इसमें चाइना भी ऐड कर लिया गया, and these 5 countries are the permanent members of UN Security Council. और 10 members होते हैं नॉन परमानेंट जो 2 साल के लिए चुने जाते हैं. Now this is the actual decision making body of the United Nations. So whatever resolution is passed in the Security Council is actually enforceable. और कोई भी डिसीजन लेने के लिए मेजॉरिटी से वो डिसीजन लिया जाता है, लेकिन इन 5 कंट्रीज के पास वीटो पावर है. वीटो मीन्स that if a decision is not acceptable to even one of these countries, then the decision cannot be taken forward. यानी कि अगर कोई डिसीजन टोटल 15 मेंबर्स हैं तो 14:1 से भी अगर कोई डिसीजन लिया जाता है, so if one of those countries which does not agree is one of these 5 countries, तो उसे कहते हैं 14:1, मतलब उसे एक कंट्री ने वीटो कर लिया उस डिसीजन को, so the decision is cancelled. That is the power that these members have, which is of course not a democratic power. Then UN Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC कहा जाता है इसे. Then UN Trusteeship Council. UN Trusteeship Council का पर्पस था कि डीकॉलोनाइजेशन के बाद जितनी भी टेरिटरीज बची थी उनका ट्रस्टी की तरह एक्ट करने के लिए ट्रस्टीशिप काउंसिल बनाई गई थी. बट सिंस ऑल दीज टेरिटरीज वर रिजॉल्व्ड, देयर वाज नो डिस्प्यूट एनीमोर, हैंस दिस ऑर्गन वाज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड. तो आज की डेट में अगर हम फंक्शनैलिटी की बात करें, देयर आर 5 ऑर्गन्स ऑफ यूएन विच आर फंक्शनल. ट्रस्टीशिप काउंसिल इज नो लॉन्गर फंक्शनल. देन ICJ, the International Court of Justice, which is the judicial organ of the United Nations. So ICJ has, it is in The Hague, which is in Netherlands, और इसमें कुल मिलाकर 15 जजेस होते हैं with 9-year tenure each. हर जज का टेन्योर 9 साल का होता है. And right now there is an Indian in the ICJ also, Justice Dalveer Bhandari. Then the Secretariat, which is the logistic organ of UN, यानी कि जो सारा का सारा मीटिंग्स ऑर्गेनाइज करना, सारे एग्रीमेंट साइन करना, एंड टू मेंटेन ऑल द रिकॉर्ड्स, that is the task of the Secretariat, and it is headed by the Secretary General. And right now the Secretary General is Mr. Antonio Guterres. Mr. Antonio Guterres is the Secretary General. He was elected in 2016. 2021 में इनके 5 साल पूरे हुए, but again he was re-elected for another 5 years. So he will be serving till 2026. तो इस तरह से UN एक पहली ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है जो कि सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के बाद बनी. इट इज स्टिल वर्किंग. और इसके बारे में एक बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग बात है जो शशि थरूर ने कही थी. Someone asked whether UN is relevant because it's like people sit together and they bore each other with their boring dialogues, boring talks. So it's a talk shop, many people say. To which Dr. Shashi Tharoor replied that it's better to bore each other with our boring talks rather than boring holes into each other's armor. Right? So that means to maintain peace, even if you do some boring talking, that is still acceptable. It is better than boring holes into each other's armor. That means it's better than violence, it's better than wars. And it has stood the test of time. Although बहुत सारी कमियां हैं United Nations में, there are countries that overpower United Nations, like the USA, but still there has not been a third world war, and it has solved more disputes than it has created. That means it is overall a good and successful organization. तो एक ये organization है. और अगर हम इसकी स्पेशलाइज्ड एजेंसीज की बात करें, देयर आर अ नंबर ऑफ ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस. फॉर एग्जांपल यूनेस्को, जो कि वर्ल्ड हेरिटेज साइट्स की लिस्ट जो है वो निकालती है. देन यू हैव UNHCR, यूनाइटेड नेशंस हाई कमीशन फॉर रिफ्यूजीज, इंटरनेशनल लेबर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, वर्ल्ड हेल्थ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. कोविड के टाइम पे सारी at the global level, the agency that was coordinating all the efforts was World Health Organization. Then you have International Monetary Fund, you have UN Women, UNICEF that works for child rights, United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA. Then you have Food and Agriculture Organization that looks after the food security in the world. So many organizations, all of them come under the purview of United Nations. So UN is the umbrella organization of which all these are specialized agencies. So this is the most important organization. Going ahead, non-aligned movement was the second important organization, especially during the time of Cold War. So as we know, Cold War के time पे पूरी दुनिया दो groups में divided थी, the US led group and the USSR led group. But there were so many countries of Asia and Africa which were getting decolonized, which were becoming independent at that time. And many of those countries, in fact all of those countries, were not willing to join a military alliance. They simply could not afford the adventurism of military conflict. Most of those countries were very, very poor. They were not developed, so they had to push millions of people out of poverty. They had to do some basic development. They had to grow as a nation. They were like an infant child who was just being born after colonization. Hence, those countries did not want to become a part of either US-led alliance or USSR-led alliance. तो ऐसी countries में से कुछ 4-5 countries थी जिनके leaders ने कहा that we will not be a part of either of your grouping. And these leaders were these 5 gentlemen over here. And these 5 gentlemen were Jawaharlal Nehru, who was of course the Indian Prime Minister, Sukarno, who was Indonesia's Prime Minister, Indonesian President, then Joseph Broz Tito, Kwame Nkrumah, who was from Ghana, Gamal Abdel Nasser, who was from Egypt, and Joseph Broz Tito was from Yugoslavia. तो इन पांचों countries के presidents और prime ministers ये पांचों लोग थे. So these 5 people came together and they gave an idea that we do not want to align with either of these camps. So they said we will be non-aligned, and hence they founded NAM, or what is called non-aligned movement. That means we will not align either with USA or with USSR. We want to be non-aligned countries. So it was founded in 1961 at the height of the Cold War, near the Cuban Missile Crisis. इसके headquarters थे जकार्ता, इंडोनेशिया में, और आज की डेट में इसके 120 मेंबर स्टेट्स हैं, और उसके अलावा भी बहुत सारे ऑब्जर्वर्स हैं जो इसके मेंबर्स हैं. So all these were the founders, not to align with US or USSR post 1945. That was the major agenda of NAM. The point is NAM relevant even today? Is NAM relevant even today? Just like United Nations, we have seen the relevance of United Nations. No Third World War. Bingo. But can we say the same for non-aligned movement? Or is India in the current circumstances or in the modern circumstances following in the footsteps of the ideology created by non-aligned movement? Is India non-aligning today? Doesn't seem to be the case. India is multi-aligning today. Now, there was a time when we were neither willing to go with A nor with B. Fast forward 70 years, today we are willing to go with both A as well as B. तो आज रशिया और यूक्रेन का जो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट चल रहा है, it has virtually divided the entire world into 2 camps. You are either with USA or you are against USA. So some binary that they are very fond of creating, you are either with Western world or you are against Western world. But from what I have gathered from the speeches of the External Affairs Minister, Mr. S. Jaishankar, I was watching this particular video a few days back, and he said very beautifully that Europe needs to grow out of the mindset that Europe's problems are world's problems, but world's problems are not Europe's problems. It's like Europe tries to see everything in the world as in a binary, that either it is a European problem or it is not, and that which is not a European problem, they are not concerned about it. there are a lot many issues that are going on in the world, like in Asia, in Africa, but they are not concerned. It's like now that it is up, अब बात क्योंकि यूरोप पे आ गई है, then it should be a global issue. We do not agree with that anymore. So India has perhaps become, now the 5th largest economy in the world, the 4th largest military in the world, and the kind of impact we have on the world. Our stance has changed. We are no longer exactly going by the non-aligned movement. We are now choosing whom to align with, whom not to align with, and in most of the cases, we are aligning with multiple countries. That is what we have chosen to do. Right? So, this shows India's changed priorities, and this shows India's changed stance. In another question in the same press conference, a reporter asked Mr. Jaishankar that, Mr. Jaishankar, don't you think that by not taking a stand against Russia in this Russia-Ukraine conflict, you are sitting on the fence? It's like you're watching the entire episode happening from a distance and you're not willing to engage. And Mr. Jaishankar said, no, I beg to disagree. We are not sitting on the fence. We are sitting on our own ground. That is what he said. And that's a beautiful statement. It shows that India earlier was speaking from a position of compulsion. It was a compulsion not to align with anyone. But now India is speaking from the position of strength, from the position of choice. It is no longer a compulsion to align with A or to align with B, or to say that we don't align with anyone. But now India is speaking out of strength. Again, that ideology was brilliant when it was devised. उस time के according ये brilliant strategy थी, and it showed India could be a world leader. But the strategy that we have now is, is a product of the current circumstances and the current situations. So दोनों तरफ अपनी strategy जो है दोनों time periods में, it I think is the most perfect strategy that India could have. So these are the important international organizations that played a role during the Cold War. We'll discuss many more such organizations and many more such topics in upcoming videos as well. So if you are new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so that you receive the notifications of these videos as and when we post them. And also let us know your views in the comment section. What kind of videos would you like? What kind of topics you want us to cover? And what all do you think is relevant for you from the CUET exam perspective that we can cover here? Maybe an MCQ series, maybe a live interactive session, maybe a marathon on GK, or maybe any other subject. Just let us know your thoughts in the comment section and we will try to take care of that. This is me, Manish Mittal, signing off. Take care.